In a high-stakes meeting, a powerful black CEO walks into a bank, ready to seal a $10 billion deal. But when the bank manager throws his father's ID on the floor in front of him, everything changes. The deal, his legacy, and a lifetime of respect are all on the line. What happens next will shock you. Stay tuned for a moment that will leave you speechless. It was a morning like any other at the prestigious Summit Bank, one of the most respected financial institutions in the country. Glass walls stretched high, capturing the skyline of downtown Manhattan as sunlight poured into the building. The entire staff was busy with the day-to-day hustle, preparing for important client meetings and processing transactions. Yet, in one of the conference rooms, a storm was quietly brewing. Inside the sleek, modern space, Daniel Lawson, the CEO of Lawson Enterprises, a powerhouse tech company valued at over $10 billion, sat across from Rebecca Hayes, the bank's senior vice president. The tension between them was palpable, but they kept it professional. Daniel, a sharp-minded, well-dressed black man, had flown in from Los Angeles that morning for one of the most significant meetings of his life, a $10 billion merger deal that would forever change the landscape of tech. Rebecca Hayes, the bank's female manager, had a reputation. She was known for being tough, for knowing the numbers inside out, and for making deals happen. She had worked hard to get to where she was, having clawed her way up in a male-dominated industry. But there was something about Daniel that rubbed her the wrong way. Perhaps it was his calm confidence, or the way he seemed to take up space in the room, commanding attention without saying a word. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the subtle but unmistakable air of superiority that came with a man in Daniel's position, a black CEO running a multi-billion-dollar company. The deal that was on the table was huge, and Rebecca knew that if this deal went through, it would secure Summit Bank's future as the go-to financier for high-stakes mergers. But that wasn't what bothered her. No, what bothered her was that Daniel Lawson seemed to be walking into this meeting with a chip on his shoulder, expecting everything to fall into place. She had heard rumors. She had heard about his family, how his father, Robert Lawson, had built a company from the ground up before passing the reins to Daniel. It wasn't the fact that Daniel was taking over for his father that bothered her. It was the way people talked about Robert Lawson, about how the elder Lawson had been a self-made man who had started with nothing but a dream and a strong work ethic. It didn't sit well with her. There was something about the way Robert Lawson's legacy was being talked about, that it seemed to elevate him in ways she couldn't explain. As Rebecca flipped through the paperwork, her eyes narrowed at one of the documents, a family ID. Daniel's father had been a significant figure in the tech industry, and the ID was a part of their financial verification process. Rebecca's fingers lingered over the document, a faint sneer forming on her lips. She didn't know why, but the sight of Robert Lawson's name printed across the ID stirred something in her. Maybe it was the constant reminders of how the Lawson name was revered in boardrooms across the country. Maybe it was the feeling of inadequacy it stirred in her. But whatever it was, it fueled the frustration that had been simmering beneath her calm exterior for weeks. "Everything looks good on my end," Daniel said, breaking the silence. "So we can proceed, right?" Rebecca didn't answer immediately. Instead, she picked up the ID, glaring at it as if it had personally offended her. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, and walked around the table. Daniel watched her, an uneasy feeling settling in his gut. Rebecca reached the edge of the table and, without warning, threw the ID onto the floor. It landed with a loud thud, the edge of the ID curling up from the impact. Daniel's eyes widened in disbelief. The room went dead silent. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a symbol, one of respect, legacy, and history. And here she was, throwing it to the ground as though it meant nothing. "Pick that up," Daniel said, his voice low but firm. The tension in the room was unbearable now. Rebecca's face turned red with anger, her eyes flashing. "You think you can just waltz in here, acting like everything is owed to you because of your father's legacy?" She spat. "This isn't about legacy, Daniel. This is about the numbers, the facts, the cold, hard truth." Daniel's jaw clenched, his fists tightening. He stood up slowly, the movement controlled but with purpose. He leaned over the table, glaring at Rebecca. "I've worked my entire life to build this company. My father may have laid the foundation, but I'm the one who made it soar. You will respect the Lawson name," Daniel said, his voice now booming with authority. The tension crackled between them, like electricity before a storm. For a brief moment, Rebecca didn't know how to react. She had always been in control, always the one who stood her ground. But in that moment, in that charged silence, she realized something. She had miscalculated. The disrespect she had shown wasn't just towards Daniel. It was towards the years of work his father had put in. It was disrespect for the black man sitting before her, who had built an empire from the ground up. For the briefest of moments, Daniel's face softened. "You want to know what I came here for, Rebecca?" he asked, his tone no longer angry, but filled with an undeniable certainty. "I came here to make sure this merger is done the right way. No games, no prejudices, just facts. But you've just made a choice that will cost you dearly." Rebecca's heart pounded in her chest. She had no idea how to fix this now. She had made a fatal mistake. Daniel didn't just represent a company. He represented everything that she had been working against, everything that, deep down, she had resented. "I'm leaving," Daniel said, his voice unwavering. "The deal is off. Don't bother trying to fix it. It's over." He turned to walk out, the weight of his words hanging heavily in the air. Rebecca stood frozen, watching as Daniel left the room. The doors clicked shut behind him, and suddenly, the silence felt louder than ever. Rebecca stood there for a long time, staring at the floor, the $10 billion deal slipping away with every second. But it wasn't just the money. It was the realization that her own biases, her own assumptions about Daniel, had led to her undoing. She had let personal pride and prejudice cloud her judgment, and now it was too late to turn back. Daniel's walk through the bank's hallway felt like a victory. He had always known that his father's name would carry weight. He just never expected it to be a weapon used against him. But now, as he walked away from the deal, he realized something powerful. He didn't need Rebecca or Summit Bank. What he needed was to make sure his father's legacy lived on in the work he was doing. And if people couldn't respect that, then they didn't deserve to be a part of it. The $10 billion deal was gone, but in the end, Daniel Lawson knew that respect couldn't be bought. It had to be earned, and he would earn it, no matter who tried to stand in his way. What an unbelievable turn of events. A single moment of disrespect cost millions, and a legacy. If this story shocked you, don't forget to hit like, share, and comment below with your thoughts. Would you have walked away from that deal too? For more jaw-dropping stories like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Join us for the next story that will challenge everything you thought you knew. Stay strong, stay inspired,